All right. I'm making sure we got everything up and going here. We got a couple minutes. I'll give. Hi, Kristen. How are you doing? Good to see you. We'll see who else gets in here. We had quite a few people registered, so we'll give it just a minute. There is a question and answer that will happen at the end. So if you have any questions, please feel free to save those for the end, and we'll give a little time for that. And here in about 1 minute, we will get started. Oh, got a few more people coming in. Okay, it's the top of the hour, so I'm going to get going. Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for our Cybersecurity Awareness webinar. So in honor of Cybersecurity Awareness Month, we decided to just do something a little bit more geared towards that and just do a general awareness for business owners and employees of how to protect your businesses during this digital age. And I want to also kind of impress during this age where cyber criminals and bad actors are really gaining ground quickly. We hear about it every single day. We've had a lot of businesses with emails compromised. We've had businesses with malware and ransomware, and we're dealing with this stuff, and we feel like it's our due diligence to get information out to everybody and make sure they're aware and can keep up with what's going on. So let's get started. Let's talk about why is cybersecurity critical for businesses. Right now, cybersecurity is more important than it has ever been. Cyber attacks are really becoming more sophisticated, and the consequences that are happening to businesses, both large and small, can be really devastating. We've seen businesses lose lots of money and reputation. Every business, regardless of its size, is a target, and we've actually seen a really big increase in small businesses being attacked. And that's because the cyber criminals know that they're more likely to pay less attention to cybersecurity. They're more likely to not have a budget for it, and they're an easier target sometimes. We have a lot of different types of threat actors that move throughout this space, right? We have big groups of cyber criminals that operate on a really large scale, but you also have a smaller scale of cyber criminals that are getting into this business. There's a lot of research out that says a lot of neurodivergent individuals that are very intelligent but have difficulty making their way through a normal pathway of a career are finding cybercrime as a really lucrative business for themselves, where they don't have to interact with people, where they're not having to be involved, and where they can make a lot of money without all the overhead and taxes and things like that. So a lot of people believe only big names, big businesses are at risk here, but the truth is every business, regardless of its size, is a target. Some of the common threats that we're seeing right now that we'd love to make sure you know about: phishing attacks. Phishing attacks are when they send something to you in an email to get you to click on it. This used to be really easy to spot because there was a lot of misspelling, gobbledygook in the domain name. Their graphics were kind of horrible. They just really weren't believable, and people could really know that this was a phishing attack. But what we're finding is with AI, that has really changed the game, because they can put into an AI engine, proofread this, make it not have any grammar or spelling mistakes, give me good graphics, make sure that this looks presentable and business-like. And so the phishing attacks are becoming more sophisticated and much harder for your employees and even business owners to spot. It's scary. Some of the ones that have come across my desk lately have been a little scary. They also have seen a big increase in ransomware. Insider threats, this may not be exactly what you think it means, but insider threats are just employees who don't know any better. They haven't been trained. They don't understand what best practice is. They don't know that sending their your client's private and secure information in an email to another email system that's not encrypted could end up in your data not being encrypted and get interceived by a bad actor. We've seen an increase in malware and viruses, especially on web pages and unknown places. A lot of times you've clicked something on a web page that looks very authentic and real, and you think it's the button to buy now. You click it and it is a malware or virus, but you don't know that, and you don't get like flashing lights and sirens going off when you click it. It sits and it waits and it's quiet, and sometimes you don't even know that you've clicked something like that. The other thing we're seeing a big rise in is social engineering. And social engineering is when they manipulate you by using things you know, by getting to know who you are, by understanding what kind of business you're in, who the people are that you might be communicating with. They do a ton of research on different industries, and they launch their attacks based on the best way to get those businesses or public entities or whatever it may be to respond. So these are some of the top cyber threats facing businesses right now. The cost of a data breach, the average cost of a data breach is staggering. It's like $4.35 million. And this is globally. Beyond the immediate financial cost, there's the loss of trust and a reputational harm that really is what the money is one thing. And if you don't have a good cyber liability policy to cover losses or to help you mitigate that breach, that money could make or break a business. So we really do suggest that if that you have a good cyber liability policy in place. And this is coming in the future where I believe everybody will be, maybe mandated, or there will be like a public policy for this in order to get business insurance, because we really have seen such an increase in how much it costs for people to remedy the problem. Not only do they have to go in and remedy the ransomware or whatever occurred, the malware, but then you have this reputational harm that you have to try to remedy. So if during the attack, some of your clients' data was leaked, you now have to go and tell your clients that happened. And then you have to have some sort of way to protect them moving forward to help with that reputation. And that all costs money. There's also legal consequences, and sometimes there's compliance issues. Different industries have different bodies of compliance. Some industries, like the DoD, they're under compliance for CMMC, that we have the NIST compliance, which can be over certain industries. We have FTC compliance, which is over any financial industry. We have HIPAA compliance, which is over anybody who deals with anybody's medical data. And so compliance bodies used to kind of be somebody that loomed in the background and possibly you could get in trouble if something happened. These bodies are becoming much more active, and they really are imposing fines and things like that. I heard it the other day being equated to just like when we get on the road and we have to follow certain rules to keep others safe, like don't drink and drive, wear your seatbelt, go the speed limit, use your blinker when you're getting over. Those are all bodies of compliance that were put on us by years and years of what was happening on the roads, how they became more crowded, how people would tend to drive faster. Those kinds of things created us to put some compliance in there. I know that, like, my father-in-law teases that someday we're going to be driving in our cars wearing helmets for how much they, put towards this kind of safety, and it was sort of a joke, but maybe not. I don't know if I'll comply or not at that point, but the same thing is being said of protecting people's data, that it's our responsibility to do that. And they suggest that cybercrime will become $1 billion industry in the next 10 years or something. So I do believe that there will be a lot more compliances put on us as business owners to make sure that we are doing our due diligence to protect people's data. Not to mention, when you have some sort of an attack, there's a lot of downtime and lost productivity. It's just why proactive cybersecurity is so essential in your business these days. You have to ask yourself, if I was without this way of doing business for 24 hours, how much does that cost on my bottom line? Because you take that and times it by 10, and that could be close to what it's going to cost you to remedy it. So you really have to weigh those factors when you're thinking of a cybersecurity strategy. Let's talk about best practices for business owners. Anywhere that you can put multi-factor authentication in, your banking websites, any of the line of business applications that you use in the business, personally, like on a personal level, it's a pain. I get it. You have to have a phone with you, or you have to get this code and enter it in. Every day they are making it more simple. Most of my MFA these days is just pushing a button on my telephone to say that I am me. But that really is like a wall that you can build for a cyber criminal who's trying to get in. By having to authenticate, it slows them down. And just like, if someone was going to break into a car or something like that, if the car has the club on it and it has a security system and it's locked and it's in a parking lot with a big light on it, you're going to be less at risk, right? It might still happen. Someone might still try to break into that car. But if you have these best practices in place, using multi-factor authentication, they might just go somewhere else, right? They might go where it's easier to get into. Another thing to safeguard your company's data is to definitely have a regular backup. If you have data that is business critical and your business has to have in order to run, it's best to also have what's called an immutable backup, or one that at the current time is not affected by ransomware. No one can promise you that whatever they put in place is 100% protection against these things. But what you want to do is put a strategy in place that allows you to be able to operate if you do have a compromise, to be able to be back up and running as quickly as possible, and to ensure that your data is not held for ransom and able to get it back. So if someone does hold your data for ransom, that is a pain. But if you have an immutable backup, you can launch that data once the investigation is over, once the attack is over, or the attack is mitigated. You want to always ensure that your software is up to date. That is really important. Whenever somebody gives you an update to software, it's because it's a security patch or a functionality patch that they're giving you. Updates are a pain. None of us like them. We don't know when we push that blue button if we're signing up for 45 minutes to sit and wait for Microsoft to update, or if it's going to be quick. And so many of us ignore that. And I get it. I used to be part of that club. I don't have time. I don't have this time to update, but updates are really important. And I really encourage you to make sure that you're doing them. But, probably best, especially if you're a business and you're busy and your time is best spent doing what you're good at, is to make sure that you work with somebody who can put them on in the background without interrupting you. You should establish and enforce cybersecurity policies for your staff. You should inform them and teach them. So, when you bring your own device to work, here are the conditions of having that device here. You sign this policy, you understand. What is our data security policy? How do we at our company believe that we keep data safe? What are the policies for that? What is our internet security policies? How is it responsible for us here at our business to use the internet, and what is the expectation? employees, unfortunately, really are our weakest links. And most of the time, it's just because they don't know any better. So educating them and giving them policies and guiding them is really one of the best practices for keeping yourself more secure. Some of the best practices for employees. So the first line of defense is awareness. Be very cautious when clicking links or opening attachments from unknown sources. Some of the most sophisticated attacks that we personally here at CyberTools have dealt with in the last few months is people changing domain names and sending things. So let's say that you do business with somebody called IT for us or something like that. And you do business with that person. So you're used to getting an email from that domain name. You're used to getting an invoice from that domain name. We've had a high incidence of business email compromise where you've entered your name and your password to your email address at some point unknowingly. You have no idea you've done it. It goes for sale on the dark web. A bad actor buys those credentials. They use it to log into your email account. They watch what you do and then they act. And one of the things they're doing is they're changing domain names by one letter and sending you emails and links and attachments from that domain name. So instead of being IT for us with one S at the end, they put an extra S because all of us are busy. None of us are paying attention. We don't have time to look at every letter in the domain name. So be really cautious with email links and attachments. Use strong and unique passwords. And I'm going to go one step further to say use a password manager because you just don't have the capacity to know 15 to 35 different passwords that are of the complexity and uniqueness that you need for it to be secure. Report suspicious activity immediately. If something seems off, say it. That the quicker you can identify and remedy, the better. So that is another really important thing for employees is as soon as you see something that seems a little off, report it, talk about it. Avoid using public Wi-Fi for work purposes. You don't want to go to Starbucks and sit with your laptop and conduct business or open your financials, or that is a public Wi-Fi. You don't want to be in a hotel room where you just connect to it without a VPN or something like that protecting you. And then lastly, lock your computer when it's not in use. We have controls on certain computers in certain environments that we provide IT for where it automatically locks somebody's computer if they don't have activity within a certain amount of time. And that's just for protection because anybody can walk in and get on that computer and do whatever. Last week I was at an IT conference in Nashville and I heard a story from a fellow IT provider out of Wyoming, and he does IT for some hospitals. And he was talking to us about how somebody entered into the hospital and was just kind of walking around and found a computer that was not locked, and it was a computer that had admin privileges. I get really unpopular sometimes because I take away people's admin privileges and I only give them to the necessary people in the business, and it's because of this. So this computer had admin privileges, and this bad actor walked right up to a computer that was off to the back of the room. Nobody was paying attention in a desk area that not a lot of people, not a lot of traffic is, and was able to infiltrate the network and download ransomware onto the entire hospital. So, and then his team was called in to remedy it. So lock your computer when it's not in use. Building an incident response plan is another really good strategy to be prepared. Identify who in your company is going to be responsible for cybersecurity. Let that person work with your IT provider. Let it be one conduit. Let all the information come into your company from one pane of glass. Define procedures for how you detect and report threats. We call them tabletop exercises where you practice things like this. It's kind of like fire drills that you did when you were young, right? My kids and I did it several years ago where we practiced that our house was on fire and this is what we would do. And, we have that fancy little thing that rolls down the window that I highly doubt could hold me up as I'm going down it, but I'm going to trust it if I have to, as I've told my kids they have to. Same sort of thing with cyber incident response plan. Practice it, talk to your staff about it, run a drill on what you would do if this or that happened. Just like you would do if you're practicing for an earthquake, or unfortunately in schools these days, they practice for active shooters. This is crime. Cyber crime is a form of crime that is affecting us all, and we have to be prepared for it. We have to bring it into the conversations with our staff. We have to bring it into the conversations with our C-suites, and talking about it and preparing a plan is the best way to do that. And then ensure regular resting and updates of the plan. Sorry, I think that should say ensure regular testing and updates of the plan. So that's kind of what I was talking about, running it through. And then if you identify anything that needs to be updated because somebody's no longer there, or it doesn't make sense to look at this computer because we don't have that computer there anymore, or whatever may be part of the plan that needs to be updated. The other thing that is really important is employee training and awareness. You heard me say earlier that employees, unfortunately, are your biggest weakness. And the only way we can really combat that is through policies and things like that, but also through education and awareness. So regular cybersecurity training sessions. Most cyber liability policies will mandate that you do this at least annually. Phishing simulations, where you simulate a phishing attack with a bad, a email that has got a bad link in it or something, and you see who's clicking on it. And you do that not to trick people, but to be able to focus your training on who is the weak link and who is clicking these things. So phishing simulations are a really good way to make employees aware and to train them. I know the tool that we use for cybersecurity training, if someone does click a link, it automatically serves them up a video right there of why they shouldn't have clicked that link. Promote a culture of security awareness and create easy to understand guidelines. These are all ways that we can really bring training and awareness to our employees. Essential cybersecurity tools and resources right now: firewalls, antivirus software, endpoint protection, where it's the next level of antivirus. You really need an endpoint detection and response piece of software at this point. It's really helpful if that comes with a SOC, which is a Security Operations Center. Somebody who's watching the endpoints and what's happening on them 24 hours and responding live if there's a problem. Encryption tools, you want to encrypt data when it's at rest and when it's in transit. And you really should partner with cybersecurity consultants and experts. Trying to do this yourself is challenging, especially if this is not your field of expertise. We have a team of people here, 14 people, that work together to keep our strategy. We have that peer group of more than 3,000 people across the United States, Canada, and the UK that we consult with that run businesses just like ours. We have vendors that we take training from every week. We are training with vendors, our antivirus vendors giving us training, our cybersecurity vendors giving us training. So really, you should talk with people who know what they're doing. It changes so fast. So, and then regulatory guidelines, like know what you're under. Are you needing to follow HIPAA? Are you needing to follow the GDPR? Are you needing to follow NIST framework or FTC compliance? Or what sort of regulatory guideline might you be under? So those are some of the ways that you guys can protect your businesses, and I'm going to open it up just in case. I really appreciate that you guys all attended the session today and we're here. I know it was a short nitty-gritty today, but in honor of Cybersecurity Awareness Month, I just wanted to cover the basics again and get it out to as many people as I could. Does anybody have any questions? There is a question and answer area that you can push and type a question in. So if anybody has one, just go ahead and stick it in there. I'll give a few more minutes and then we'll call it a day and let everybody go eat some lunch. Oh, somebody here has a question. Okay, they ask about penetration testing and vulnerability scanning. What are these two tools? So this is a way of checking your network. So when you have all these tools in place, we can control, like as from an IT provider perspective, we can control certain things. But when we get to like knowing what's happening on computers and what end users might be doing, we can't control all of that. So a penetration test and a vulnerability scan will tell us any known vulnerabilities of, what is somebody on the Wi-Fi that shouldn't be. Those kinds of things can be determined. Is the firewall blocking things, or do we have brute force attacks going on? Do we have people moving large amounts of data? Those kinds of things can be picked up by a penetration or a vulnerability scan. It's a really good practice to do. Thanks for that question. All right, everyone. Well, I hope you guys have a great lunch today and look forward to our next webinar next month. Take care.